Good afternoon. There are 84 days until the 2022 midterm elections. Welcome to today's episode of the Mary Trump Show strategy sessions with the Nerd Avengers and a special guest, Chara Torres Spellacy, who is a Brennan Center Fellow and Professor of Law at Stetson University College of Law. She's the author of the books Corporate Citizen and Political Brands. And today, I want to start here. We cannot move on from the fact that Donald Trump allegedly stole documents, not just top secret, but highly sensitive documents, typically referred to as SCIs, that one, he had no right to. Two, that at least his lawyers lied about his possessing. And three, that he has used, or at least the FBI's search warrant and removal of those documents he has used once again to stoke division, to create chaos, while being also once again aided and abetted by the Republican Party and the media, which quite frankly has, let me be clear, the mainstream media, which has quite frankly cast this in such political terms that it's kind of horrifying. You know, we've seen headlines like a simmering feud in search of Donald's home. There's not a feud here. Donald's been attacking the Defense Department and the intelligence community since 2015, right? We've seen headlines like an unprecedented FBI raid demands unprecedented transparency. No, it doesn't. The DOJ is obligated not to disclose information, in part because it could potentially harm Donald's defense if he needs to put one on. So we're going to talk about that, all of that, right? The violence, the potential for violence, how this needs to be reframed, how it needs to be understood, what we know, what we don't know, what we can reasonably, responsibly speculate. But at the same time, you know, we're in this position once again where one, don't get me wrong, it's an extraordinarily important thing, right? This is a very important event that is unfolding because, as we all know, we are living through history, and for the most part, it really sucks. However, that doesn't mean we lose sight of other bad things that are going on. Like, for instance, the fact that the fascist mass murderer Ron DeSantis is putting all sorts of authoritarian things in Florida, the fact that Indiana passed a near total abortion ban, the fact that there are texts still missing from the Secret Service, the Department of Homeland Security, and the Department of Defense. But we also don't want to lose sight of the good stuff. Joe Biden just had arguably the best 2 weeks of any American president in modern history. 528,000 jobs were added. Zawahiri, the number one Al Qaeda, was killed. CHIPS Act passed. The PACT Act passed. The Inflation Reduction Act passed. Kansas, the Kansas voters passed protections for abortion. He signed the gun safe law, and on and on. I mean, that list is a very long one, and we're not even scratching the surface in terms of what he's done since he came into office. So, I want to start here with you, Jen. What have we learned since Friday? When I think Friday, did we have our emergency session on Friday? It seems like 7,000 millennia ago. What has happened since Friday to help clarify what actually is happening here? Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention what's going on in Georgia, but we'll get to that later. What is going on vis-a-vis the DOJ's, what the DOJ has, what potentially they're looking at, and why or why not the fact that Donald did or did not declassify documents matters.
Well, hi, Mary.
Hi.
That's a lot. And hi, Chara. Glad you are with us. She has the glowing introduction. So yeah, you'll hear about
I did introduce, but now I should say hello. Hi, Tara. Hi there. So happy here with vendors.
I mean, it's hard to reconstruct for certain what we did or did not know as of Friday when we met last. But what I can say that I know is new, sort of in a reverse chronological order. One new thing we learned is that apparently, according to sources at the Department of Justice, Merrick Garland deliberated for several weeks before he ultimately pulled the trigger and signed off on the search warrant that led to, is it now 1 week ago or 2 weeks ago? It's hard for me to remember. 1 week ago, yeah?
A week ago yesterday.
A week ago.
Yeah, a week ago Monday, a week ago yesterday, when he allowed for that. So he deliberated for several weeks. I wonder whether the timing of actually signing off was because he was coming up against the so-called 90-day window. It's that loose norm where the Department of Justice apparently decides not to take any new actions or any actions involving an investigation that might affect an election. Now, of course, Donald Trump is not running for any kind of office at this moment, but to the extent that that could have been a concern, I think it's really helpful that whoever had his ear got him to act on that. So that's something we just learned. Another thing, should I continue, or is
yeah, please?
Another thing that we just learned is that apparently 2 expired U.S. passports, as well as Donald's, I think his special diplomatic passport that was still active, were inadvertently swept up in the boxes or documents that were taken as part of a week ago Monday's search, but they were never actually in the hands of the actual, FBI team. They had been screened properly by that screening team that's supposed to take things out that don't belong, and they were offered back to him. And instead of just quietly having his lawyer pick them up, Donald decided to rant on his own, quasi failed Twitter type social network called Truth Social. He decided to rant. Yeah, he decided to rant about claiming that these had been stolen from him. Not exactly sure why. And then I think the other thing that we have learned, still kind of going back, is that Donald Trump's team is trying to get a hold. Well, we know that the parts of the search warrant were made public because Merrick Garland last week on Thursday called Donald's bluff because he was complaining that this was, he was talking about the search, and he was complaining that they, show us the warrant, even though he could have showed it to the public. So pieces of the warrant have been made public, but not all of it. What was included was this sort of the sort of first page of the warrant talking about the statutes under which the search was conducted, which is really critical because, alluding to what Mary said, none of the statutes for which there was probable cause that these crimes had been committed, none of those crimes involve confidential or top secret documents. All 3 of the crimes mentioned in the search warrant, doesn't matter whether it was, in particular, the espionage statute, that there's probable cause that it was violated and evidence was at Mar-a-Lago. That espionage statute deals with sharing any information that could be damaging to the United States with others, or improperly storing it, and so on, as were the other statutes. At any rate, the piece of that we have not, that no one has seen, is the affidavits. And an affidavit is a sworn statement, a sworn and signed statement. And with a search warrant, the affidavit that accompanies the search warrant for a magistrate to look at, or magistrate judge to look at, is usually a statement by law enforcement. So there's at least probably 1, if not 2, sworn, or more, but probably at least around 2 statements, sworn and signed statements, sworn under penalty of perjury by FBI agents about what they knew or what they were told and the reasons that they did believe that these crimes had been committed. Donald wants those released. The judge, of course, the Department of Justice has filed saying they don't want those released. And
Wait, do you really think he wants them released?
he wants the names of the agents who signed those affidavits to be made public so that their lives can be threatened, if not ended, similar to the Mike Pence situation. And maybe they will back down. And it's also a way, if you make someone's life a living hell, anyone else who might be supporting this life will be made a living hell. So that's kind of what's going on. So of course the hearing will be on Thursday, and this and even the next step, he wants it unredacted and released. But even a redacted version where you just got rid of the names is also dangerous because it would reveal how the information was known, and Donald would be able to figure out who the leak was because he's flipping obsessed with that.
Would a judge do that? Would it, based on what's happened in the last week, would a judge sign off on unsealing these documents that could potentially put people's lives in danger?
It's not, I mean, I'm not a, as you know, I'm not a federal prosecutor, but a lot of my friends are, and this is not normal to do this. Most defendants would have to wait, I believe, is my understanding. But that's my update on what is happening around this. And then of course, what we're hearing is, that Donald is trying to throw anyone under the bus and everyone under the bus.
Mm-hmm.
And I've also heard that Mary Trump, his niece, thinks it might be Jared who's the leak. That's what
Seriously?
I read that on Twitter, Mary. And I think.
Oh, well, then it must be true.
It must be true. That's what I got for you.
Fascinating. Yeah, I think she was speaking to Dina Obadala when she made that informed guess. I don't know. You bring to mind a couple of things. I think personally that the passport thing was nothing, and all it did was make me wonder, why is he thinking about his passport? As we know, they don't take people's passports unless they're indicted and are considered a flight risk. But at the same time, somebody with his alleged money and actual connections just hops on a private plane. So I don't think it would matter one way or the other. So Shara, Donald's grandstanding about the passports brings to mind what happened last week. Once again, one side plays by the rules, which gives him an open field to lie, to stir up anger and insanity on the right. We have somebody who was at January 6th opening fire on an FBI facility, ends up getting shot to death. We have days during which the Republican Party was able to get organized and get on board and decide that once again, they're not going to take the off ramp. They're going to go all in with Donald. And we have the media writing egregious headlines like Garland vowed to depoliticize justice. Then the FBI searched Mar-a-Lago, as if this is a political issue, which it absolutely is not. So how do we, or I guess I'm not sure what we can do, but how does the DOJ and FBI regain that ground, because it is so dangerous to leave these people unchallenged?
Well, I think all of this goes to the rule of law and no one being above the law, including ex-presidents. I've had to remind journalists locally that there's no ex-president exception to search warrants, which is a strange thing for a constitutional professor to have to do, but they get these Republican talking points and they fall for them, or they're not trained as lawyers, they're just journalists, and they fall for them. So I thought it was very helpful to have Merrick Garland out there speaking and talking about the rule of law and also talking about the presumption of innocence. I thought that was a very important point that he included that.
Yeah, absolutely, because I think we've heard nothing but crickets unless I'm missing something. I don't think we've heard much of anything, except of course Rand Paul has to pipe up and say we need to repeal the Espionage Act because Donald might have committed espionage, and it's yet again an example of the extremism which we see playing out. And unless anybody has something to add right now, because again, we're at the beginning of this, we are we don't know what is going to happen. We don't know what else they have. I personally think it's very difficult at this point to believe that they went through all of this just to get some stuff back that he shouldn't have had. I can't end there. It seems to me highly unlikely that it ends there. So, okay, Brian, there's some info you have from the DOJ that might be relevant to this conversation. Let's hear that.
Other than the grins and the laughs and the guffaws, yeah. The guys that I've talked now, look, some of these people I've known 35, 40 years, and they're upset, particularly upset with Donald Trump's casting of them as the bad guy. But what's been told to me, and that I can share without attribution, is that the walls are closing in on Donald Trump. The moves between the DOJ and Georgia are coordinated. There are investigators at the DOJ that are working on the Georgia investigation. The Georgia investigation is working hand in hand with several investigations that the DOJ has undertaken. And at this point, I can tell you there are many dozens of people working on it, more than 100 that are working on these cases. And that while, one of the things that was tough for them to take in the beginning was sitting still while everyone criticized Merrick, including me, criticized Merrick Garland for being slow to the game, but he wasn't. And it was, and they were meticulously putting it together from the very beginning. So this week, they said that we should be careful to watch what goes on in Georgia. 15 minutes after that, the thing came down about Rudy Giuliani being a target of the investigation. So I'm led to believe that.
And Graham having to testify.
And I'm led to believe that there will be more information from the DOJ about the Donald Trump investigation that will fall this week. So that I don't know where it goes, but I do know, and Mary, you'll find this maybe funny, but I was speaking with Michael Cohen, who agrees with you exactly and thinks that it was Jared who's the snitch. And he also went farther. He says after he's interacted with the DOJ, he believes that Donald Trump will be indicted. Now, at the end of the day, everyone, even in the Justice Department, who are moving in that direction, do not believe that Donald Trump will ever spend a night in Otisville or a federal prison, but he may well be confined to Mar-a-Lago with an ankle bracelet on and be unable to interact with the media, which would be that, as you said, if he's left in a room by himself, he ceases to exist. And that could indeed be the worst punishment that could be offered. In fact, Mary, I will venture to say there are members of the DOJ who listen and watch your podcast because they use almost the exact same words. If he's in a room by himself, he will cease to exist. And at the end of the day, I don't think we could hope for anything better.
Well, I mean, that's heartening. A lot of that is heartening. And because my position is he has to be indicted. If he did, yes. if he is guilty of these, he should have been indicted a long time ago. But at the very least, let's indict him for espionage. But if he continues to be able to own Mar-a-Lago and Trump Tower and all those other places after all of this, then I don't think that's really justice. But we'll get to that. I think the indictment is more. He shouldn't be able to stay there. He should be, in a walk up in Sunnyside, Queens, or something. But we'll leave the punishment for later because right now the potential indictments are the most important thing. Because Cliff, as much as I think we don't want to have to talk about optics and wish that we didn't have to talk about messaging, both of those things really matter. And we've seen how optics matter with the January 6th committee hearings. I mean, imagine if those hearings had been held like other congressional hearings are held and everybody gets 5 minutes to grandstand and nothing ever gets accomplished, right? So these things do matter. And I think given the fact that 2022 is coming up fast and we are in serious danger when 2/3 of Republicans who won their primaries are pushing to overturn the results of 2020. We need something.
Yeah.
To show the American people that this is not only is it serious, but it isn't just Donald.
Right. And that's been sort of my mantra, the thing I've been screaming about in everything I do, is that it is all of them. They are him. He is them. Does anybody think Ted Cruz or Josh Hawley or, Gozar or any of these people would be behaving any differently right now? The key is to make sure they have all literally tied themselves so closely to this man. Right. And so right now he gets indicted. And I feel the same way as you. I mean, I'm not a prosecutor. I'm not a lawyer. I would still be concerned even getting him in front of a jury if it's, a regular jury, if it's possible to have a jury without one cultist on it at this point. But I am an expert in his right-wing media, having worked at Sinclair and places like that. And they've infected so many minds at this point that just making sure there's a fair trial concerns me. So, but indicting him and making sure he has that stain against him and that all of this comes out and that we have further January 6th hearings as we're going to have in September. And then just boom, boom, you keep hitting them with that messaging that they've all defended him. And you're showing Marco Rubio and Rand Paul and all these people in ads, how they stood there by Trump and they lied about the FBI and they encouraged violence and they're with him and they think women deserve no rights. And there's a simple message you can put together there about how ill fit the Republican Party is to have any kind of power, how dangerous they are to your personal freedoms, how dangerous they are to our national security. And, beyond the Democratic base turning out like crazy, like it did clearly in Kansas, and people who were, moderates switching sides there, like that's what we want. We want the base turning out like crazy, and we want people that are in the sane, people that are Republicans because that's just what their family was, and they've always been kind of moderate Republicans, or people that have broken away who are independents, just to look at the entire party and say, from dog catcher up into president, I can't vote for these people. Like, we can't have a replay of 2020 where they maybe a lot of them vote against Trump, but they vote for their congressman who ended up decertifying electoral votes. So they vote for their senator, who we know now in many cases were behind the scenes working with Trump. They have to all be politically destroyed by this. So yes, that he gets indicted is incredibly, incredibly important here.
Yeah, and George.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I was so
is Wordle hard today?
No, I just do the times many. Wordle's too high.
Okay.
Wordle's too high tone for me.
The inimitable George Hahn coming up now.
All right, so take a break from spelling bee for a second. No, I'm kidding. This is, again, everything seems like deja vu. We've been dealing with this for so long now that this just feels like another in a long series of escalations that has been allowed to happen because there are never any consequences for anything. But there has to be, well, maybe there doesn't have to be a point at which we kind of dig our heels into the ground and say enough and no more. But this does at least feel different. And, people don't yell at, people listening, watching, don't yell at me. I understand nothing bad, nothing ever happens. But there's sometimes you get to the point where things just don't go away. And that's always been the case for Donald. He does some horrible thing and then he does another horrible thing. And the first horrible thing just disappears. So nothing's cumulative. I think that changed on January 6th. So if they start hearings again soon, I think this is really going to gain traction in a way that nothing has before. And if you add into that the egregious decisions of this corrupt, totally illegitimate Supreme Court, Democrats might have a winning hand they can't fuck up.
No, they can always mess it up.
All right, Brian.
Yeah.
I'm talking to George. I'm trying to be positive.
Well, interestingly, or perhaps not interestingly, I don't know, but Sarah Palin, who is the direct descendant of the "Let's Get Stupid" movement.
Actually, she's the founder.
Well, some argue that it went all the way back to the seeds were planted all the way back with Reagan, but
Yeah, actually, you're right.
Nixon.
I would
that is
say,
very true.
or Nixon, but in this century, in the 21st century, Palin sort of opened the gates for made it okay to be stupid, and not just okay, but preferable for a lot of people, and actually doing things like reading, thinking critically, learning new things and factoids, and all of that was the devil. And it continues.
Mm-hmm.
So it's funny. She's after over a decade out of politics. She's back on the scene again. Is she Trumpy enough, or is Trumpy Palin-esque enough? It's a little. So anyway, to your point, will this go away? He is sort of like political COVID. Are we going to have to just sort of live with it? I don't know, but
no, we can't. We don't have the antibodies.
And I scratch my head constantly on a daily basis every time I look at Twitter or see another alert on my phone, thinking with these Republicans, this is a party and a movement that and Cliff mentioned this, touched upon this. They're really just interested in taking things away, basic rights,
Mm-hmm.
And the only beneficiaries of this movement seem to be rich, straight, white guys, except Peter Thiel, but rich, straight, white guys. Closeted. I've done some research there. And that'll be in the book. Names change. No. But these oh god, and they're boring and they can't dance or tell a joke to save their ass.
They can't even do the Macarena.
And then
I call it the white guy underbite.
Yeah.
And their concept of what big D energy is. Oh, poor crazy, poor crazy legs.
Design choices are just horrible.
Oh my god. Somebody said the other day that what's the real crimes at Mar-a-Lago were the interior design.
Yeah, but you can blame Marjorie Merriweather Post for that, because that's exactly what it looked like.
It
when
really
she
is just
it feels Saddam Hussein light a little bit.
Right. A lot of gold radiator.
Imagine Liberace if he was straight.
Can we just drop a footnote and ask ourselves, have any fascist movements ever had good design?
No, they can't.
No.
Fascism destroys creativity and
they're toxic white males. It's
yeah.
I mean, not always white males, but they're toxic straight males for the most part. So it's impossible.
Yes, it is funny to a point, but Jen, you actually bring up a point that I think is interesting, and there is, I think, a through line in terms of there is no discernment or taste. It goes from just a purely aesthetic level, but also discernment with politics or intellect.
Yeah, there's no art, there's no philosophy, there's
control, right? Uniformity, creativity, questioning, thinking for yourself are at odds with authoritarian movements, right?
Mm-hmm.
And also with this sort of there must be this savior figure. So anyone who would want that isn't really that interesting.
Think about what happened. Hold on. In the 4 years of the Trump administration, what happened? Didn't go to the Kennedy Center honors. Probably totally defunded the what is it called? The Institute, the government funded.
Oh, for the arts, the National Endowment of the Arts.
Thank you very much. Probably underfunded that egregiously. And
the war on Sesame Street.
What they did to the Rose Garden, the bloody Christmas tree. I know that seems frivolous, but it isn't, because it's just another thing, another freedom that gets attacked.
They think there is this. They try to cling to this American culture. There is no culture. And what they're trying to talk about, there isn't any. And every culture that is American comes from somewhere else. Really, this is a crowd.
And a Confederate flag is a hell of a cultural statement. Come on.
Absolutely. And like these are people who, they love their rock and roll, but I would be loath to find an inductee in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame that wouldn't hate every fucking one of these people and wouldn't want any of them at their concerts, and stop using my music at your rallies bullshit.
Yep.
And, all hail comedian legends like, George Carlin, even Joan Rivers would be like, who are you people? Get out of here.
Yeah.
They all got it wrong. And, so
I'd
we're
like to
sitting
see
here.
Don Rickles take a shot at him, but
Oh God, that would be delicious. But this is a real culturally ass backwards. It's a stunted growth. It's an atrophy. It's a rage against intellectualism and thinking. And look at what Ron DeSantis is doing with like recruiting teachers with no training.
Veterans.
Learning is option. Like, what is this?
Yeah.
What the fuck is this?
Brian, hang on a second, because I want to go to Chara. One, because her dad was an artist. Two, because she's in Florida at, the ground zero of our proto-fascist movement down there.
Yes,
and also,
please.
Chara, I think so much of what we're talking about can be located in the fact that the worst among us were given free rein for 2 years, and that disease metastasized, and every institution, every norm has been threatened, and in some cases irrevocably.
Yeah. Ron DeSantis has been picking on people who are smaller than him or less powerful than him. If anything, from the Don't Say Gay bill, which is now law in Florida, which is impacting how teachers can interact with their students. Essentially, you can't talk about sexuality with third graders or younger. Well, you have third graders who have gay parents, and that is now a taboo subject in their own school. So I think they are only damaging, the most powerless among Floridians. And his dust up recently with suspending the attorney prosecutor, Andrew Warren. He's a state attorney, which is a prosecutor for Hillsborough County, otherwise known as Tampa. And the reason that he was suspended is he said in a letter that he would not prosecute people for having abortions. There wasn't an active case that he refused to prosecute. And that is so close to dismissing an elected official for a thought crime. It's really, really scary.
And even if this man did have a case in front of him, as you said, he's an elected official. Can governors just say, yeah, you know what? I don't agree with you. I know the people chose you, but I don't care. But well, actually, Florida's kind of known for this. There was a referendum, I think it was in 2016, I'm not sure, to restore voting rights to former felons. And the Florida legislature, which is very dominated by Republicans, said, I don't really give a shit what you, the Florida voter, thinks. And I think it's very important to keep an eye on DeSantis. I'm not sure about him as a national candidate because the man has no charisma, and I don't know that his thuggery plays outside of his, increasingly small bubble. But it is worth looking at because he's a template. Every time he says something, he's got law enforcement standing behind him. That's a bad sign. Because law enforcement is really not supposed to engage in political stuff. I mean, let's just ask Tony Ornato about that. The guy who's Secret Service, supposed to be all neutral. Although if you read Carol Lenning's book, Zero Fail, we know that's nonsense. But goes and takes a very political decision as a deputy chief of staff for the White House, and now he's back as leader of. He's in charge of training at the Secret Service now. I mean, they're blurring the lines so much that it's very difficult to stay focused on what they're doing, what they're undermining, and just how far they're willing to go, which, by the way, is all the way. Yes, Brian.
Look, I want to just say something about the authoritarian plan of Trump. And I can only say after, and this is something I've written before, there is no overriding big plan. There never was. With
Not for Donald.
Trump, it's survival by the seat of your pants every day, all day long for a lifetime. With him, it's a fear of loneliness while being alone with his innermost demons and doing battle with a world he can't stand and can't understand. It is a life dominated by fear, hence his need to make everyone else fearful. He does it because he doesn't want to be alone. I've never seen a man more afraid of being alone than Donald Trump. His status and his privilege give him an immense ability to affect others, which he does so to suit his needs and his alone. It is the DeSantis, it is the others who have an authoritarian agenda who have made use of Donald Trump's weaknesses to further their agenda. And they're the ones at the end of the day that are going to have to be watched after Donald Trump. I do believe Donald Trump will be investigated and indicted, and whatever happens is up to the criminal justice system. But it's keeping track of all those people who have made hay, including the Josh Hawleys of the world, the Stephen Millers of the world, that those people going forward are held accountable because they're the cancer spread. And Donald Trump, I think in the end, with any luck, will be a horrible footnote in history. But it's going to take a lot of work to make sure that the others that he's incited and who do have those authoritarian desires. Trump is just about.
You know what, Brian? I know you want to make him a footnote, but he's not going to be a footnote.
I know. You're right, Mary.
Listen,
you're right.
He killed 1 million people because of COVID. I want to go back to Char for a second. Because part of the problem is, again, as Brian's pointing out, the focus is often on Donald when people like Stephen Miller and Josh Hawley and Ted Cruz, they get off the hook. And it seems to me that part of that is a breakdown. One thing we learned from his administration is that, again, there are no traditions, there are no norms, you can't rely on human decency. You can't rely on a person's sense of shame if they don't have one. So we saw how fragile our institutions were and continue to be, because if you can't hold seditionists accountable and allow them to continue to participate in governing us, right? If you can't figure out a way to right the wrong of a 6-3 Supreme Court that is doing everything in its power to undermine the progress we've made, give or take, in the last 50 or 60 years, to promote a political anti-American agenda, then what can we do? I think it undermines, it plays into the Republican base, and it undermines the faith that the rest of us are trying to continue to have in a system that's really broken.
Well, I think one of the things that I'm encouraged by is the effectiveness of the January 6th committee. They have really let prosecutors, both state and federal, have a blueprint to prosecuting lots of different crimes, whether it's the fake electors or sedition or interrupting a congressional proceeding. There are many different crimes that many different people, including sitting members of Congress, can face. And we mentioned earlier what's going on in Fulton County, Georgia, that Rudy Giuliani is now a target and Lindsey Graham can't quash his subpoena. So I am encouraged that there are prosecutors out there who are going to enforce the rule of law. It's going to take a little while. And I think the sadness is today is an election day, and Liz Cheney may lose her seat in Congress today. But I think in the long run, the work that she did with the January 6th committee will help us get back on the right track.
And sadly, Sarah Palin will probably be nominated today in Alaska. Or I guess they've got the top 4 system or whatever, but she'll come through that.
You know what, Cliff? I saw a I think it was the headline on the front page of the Times, that Alaska voters are divided as to whether, Sarah Palin has their backs or abandoned them for national fame. I'm like, in what universe did she ever have your back? Like the fact that people are so willing to continue to delude themselves, and for what? Like, is it? Sometimes I just think it's because we shifted the conversation from, we want the people who lead us to be better than we are, smarter, more accomplished, more experienced, experts in government and in politics. Politics is expertise in government to some degree, right? And once it was, who would you rather have a beer with? The conversation then became, I want people in government, leaders who don't make me feel bad about my shortcomings.
Right. I mean, I'll make a generalization about it, which is, sorry if right wingers are offended, and actually I'm not sorry.
I think that's our job.
By saying I'm sorry, I mean I'm not sorry in the slightest. Which is, I think, all of us sitting here and people who generally have liberal politics, who are educated, who are worldly, I was glad that Barack Obama was smarter than me. I wasn't insecure. That was awesome, because I want somebody there who I know, will be is just about the smartest person you can have there. We want the most talented people there. We want the most empathetic people there. We want the most competent people there. The problem is, it's not just the selling of the who do you want a beer with. That was part of it, but it's also the selling of like, oh, well, they're just expert politicians. They're talking down to you. You should want people just like you. And so, who's that? Kid Rock and, like Chachi.
I mean, if Kid Rock and Chachi are just like you, you need to examine your life choices.
Well, yeah, but that's sadly, that's a lot of this country who now because look, people look at Marjorie Taylor Greene, sadly, and they're reminded of themselves, and they look at, and Hawley and Cruz obviously are Ivy League educated and just pretending, but there's some real ones in there. I mean, Marsha Blackburn's a complete moron. They look at her and they're like, yeah, she's
one of our kind of people. Yeah, we roll like her. She's real gonna bring America back to the basics.
Right, to a Christian theocratic apartheid state. That's exactly what we're.
Please, Jesus, where's my gun?
I'm not talking. Just to be clear, I'm not talking about socioeconomic status. I'm not talking about education. I am talking about the belief system. I'm talking about sorry, the Midwestern accent, spot on. I'm talking about the fact that these people constantly lie, and they are racist, misogynistic, anti-immigrant bullies. So is it enough? Seriously, is it enough to feel like they're just like you in these ways? So their hatred is worth putting up with, or is it the hatred that they like? I think
what was it?
One line. Let me just say one line, and then I'll kick to whoever. Which is LBJ's big line always was, for when he's talking about right wing Southerners and others, is that as long as you can make the lowest white man feel better than the best black man, and I'm obviously not using certain words, then you can win them over, and that's a metaphor for a lot of this. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's true. George,
what was it about the pre-Donald time? There was a time. I don't know if I'm going to say this right, but there was a time when these people felt afraid to come out in daylight with their beliefs, but Donald gave them all the giant permission slip.
Yeah.
To march, speak, carry tiki torches from, where did they come from? Home Depot. Demonize khakis, and just kind of make all kinds of things look bad in the interest of racism, white supremacy. But there was a time when these people felt like, oh, that's what I believe, but I got to shut the fuck up about it. Now they feel emboldened to be loud about it. Which is better or worse? Number one, and what do we do now with it?
I like seeing it out in the open rather than being hidden. But who gave?
I do too. Like we turn the light. It's like we turn the lights on and the roaches are everywhere.
Yeah.
But wait a second, Jen.
Guys. As a woman growing up in America, these folks have never been hidden from us.
Right.
Try to be a middle school girl in America. Right. In other words,
a black boy or girl.
Yeah.
Sure.
It's been, but I think what's different is there are more people more people are vocal about this, and we have someone.
I don't
Yes.
think their numbers have changed, though, Jen. I think it's a function of social media. These people have always existed. I got called
Right.
sand inward going to school. We always knew they were there.
Yeah, but I think they can convince more people now because of social media. The problem is there are people that maybe have some inclinations and like cult TV, pre Fox, Sinclair, Salem, whatever. They weren't I mean, haven't you guys heard these stories, friends of yours or parents of your friends and others that were once liberal and are now like, after
They were
watching
never
Fox,
liberal.
But wait a second, guys. I think, yes, obviously social media is a blight.
No,
it needs
Cliff,
to be
my parents are
regulated.
still Republicans, sadly. So
Right.
And everybody's got a video camera in their pocket too, so we're seeing
Yes,
more of it.
But I think also what is very important is that from 2017 to 2019, these people were represented by 100% of the federal government. They were empowered in a way they hadn't been since Jim Crow.
That's what I mean. They've been emboldened.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So all of those other factors are absolutely part of the equation. But without the empowerment and without being emboldened, I'm not so sure that we're operating in the same landscape. By the same token, Jen, I think we can say the same thing about the government and the failures of our institutions. Now, we've said, look, the institutions held. Well, yeah, because one person here and there, like a 23-year-old Cassidy Hutchinson, right? Or who, by the way, didn't say anything until a year and a half later. I mean, I'm glad she said something, but remember, a lot of those people just didn't say anything when it might have mattered more. So it's the whole picture. It isn't just the base. Jen.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, this thing about institutions. The institutions aren't holding if you have to keep saying our institutions held. In other words,
oh, that's going on a coffee mug.
Yeah, I mean, that one bridge just hasn't fallen, and SCOTUS didn't hold, and that's a lifetime.
Right. That's right. And we're also. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And I live, even though I spend my time thinking a lot about Washington and New York and these big cities, possibly because I grew up in the Midwest and now I live in like Western Massachusetts, sort of outside of all of this stuff. Most of my time when I'm not working, I'm kind of occupying what we might call like more of the real world, where people, although I guess I live in the People's Republic of, Northampton, but still, but I get this, the people who a lot of people I know just don't focus on politics, but what they do get, what does seep through, unfortunately, is the both sidesism that keeps getting played out. And what does come through is this kind of, this whole like the institution that hasn't held is free and fair elections. Because even though, people know that, we hear even Bill Barr saying it wasn't stolen, we still have the Republicans who have completely eviscerated, thanks to, John Roberts, the Voting Rights Act. And my friend Chara knows a lot more about election law than I do, but it's this lack of faith in the system, but also the inability and the inaccessibility of the ballot for people, and the fear that our votes won't be counted fairly because of these crazy election deniers getting in charge of the Secretary of State's offices and the local officials who are counting the ballot. So now, I don't know if our institutions held. There could be nothing more important than the right to vote. And John Roberts began unraveling that, overturning the Shelby County decision. Yep. So I feel uncomfortable about that. And I hope that last dam doesn't break, but I'm not sure.
Right. And I think you could argue the Supreme Court stopped holding in 2000 with Bush v. Gore. You could argue that, yes, 2020 was the most free and fair election in our country's history, if you're not a person of color who was kicked off the voter rolls for absolutely no reason, or if you're a person of color who had to wait in line for 12 hours. And we know that's only going to get worse because of what the Republican Party is doing. But we're also talking about the fact that what has not been investigated. The kidnapping, torture, and incarceration of children at the border, the mass murder of 1 million people from COVID because Donald couldn't deal with any kind of negativity and had to lie about it, and on and on. And I'm wondering if is this is this because the Democrats knew they had to focus on one thing, just as there's been some speculation that the DOJ knew that it was dealing with these extraordinarily serious issues, so they had to focus on that and let some statute of limitations pass, because it would have diluted. I mean, I don't know, that I've heard that, and maybe that's true. Maybe it is important to focus on one or two things instead of giving them. I don't know. I just find it so incredibly frustrating that they're getting away with so much. But at the same time, if New York does its job and Fulton County does its job and the DOJ does its job and the January 6th committee does its job, then it can't possibly begin and end with Donald Trump. At least, that's my hope. Any last thoughts about that, Brian?
Well, I guess I think we'll have to wait and see. The DOJ, I'm not going to make the mistake I made before and guess that they're not. I do know that there are investigations of the kids in cages events. I do know that there are other things that the DOJ is involved in. But I think for the American people right now, the function is that the focus has to be, if you believe that the law applies equally to everyone, that is, whether you're a homeless person in New York City or the former president of the United States, that the same rules apply. No one is above the law. Therefore, Donald Trump must be not only investigated, but he must be indicted. How it falls out in court is up to the court system, and we'll all have to accept whatever happens. But we need to see. I'd like to. All right, Jen. Why not both? Would love to see Donald homeless. He may well.
Well, he should not be allowed to live in Mar-a-Lago or Trump Tower.
And I think at the end of the day, Mary, I've talked with other members of the DOJ who said it's not beyond the pale that the federal government to pay debts incurred by Donald Trump would seize properties from Donald Trump companies. So that's definitely something that's at least under consideration and that could be done. So he may well not end up in Mar-a-Lago. I don't think he ends up in Otisville.
No,
New York,
that's not going to happen. That is not going to happen.
A walk-up tenement owned by Jared in Baltimore would be fine too. That would be okay,
as long as Jared also has to live there.
But yeah, there you go. But the final word is, I don't think we're going to see the final word on all this for a long time.
Right.
But I do have faith that the DOJ is investigating everything that needs to be investigated. Although I'm still, I hope that at the end of the day, and I've been told by those who work inside the DOJ, that Merrick Garland does not cater to politics. He will follow the rule of the law, because I do not want to see something waiting. I don't want to see them waiting till after the midterm to file, if they can file before the midterm. And the only consideration for not filing until after the midterm elections is because of political considerations. That would be taking politics into consideration, and I would prefer that they didn't.
There's a 60-day window that, I mean, we can talk about another time.
As Comey said, he didn't follow that.
Well, because that's just, I'm trying to keep my blood pressure low, so let's not go there. George, hang on one second, because Brian said something, Chara, that said two things that I just want you to speak to briefly. One is, lay people like me are very frustrated that political time is much, much faster than legal/judicial time. And two, I'm not so sure. I mean, hopefully he's right that nobody in Donald's orbit is above the law, but I kind of feel like 6 people on the Supreme Court are.
Yeah, the 6-3 Supreme Court is a real danger. There does not seem to be an adult among them. Perhaps the Chief Justice counts as the adult, but he cannot control 5 justices to his right.
Right.
So I think they will do more damage before they become self-aware and stop. Though I did want to add one Florida case to your radar, which is the Florida ghost candidate scandal out of 2020.
Yep.
That may come to a head very soon because a man named Frank Artillis, who has been charged in that scandal, his criminal case, is scheduled for August 30th. And who knows what will come out of that prosecution. It is possible that the press is right and that the ultimate funding for the ghost candidates in the 2020 election was a company called Florida Power and Light. And that, I think, is explosive, but not quite proven yet. And so I am keeping my eyes on that prosecution to see whether the prosecutors follow the money in that case.
Oh, wow. That's really interesting. Definitely. George?
So going into the midterms in terms of, avenging, etc., going into the midterms, what are some top things? I'm literally asking, like throwing it around the room. Like, what top things should we be touting, bragging about, reinforcing, boasting about going in? Like, is it the economy sort of turnaround? Is what Brian?
Infrastructure. That is, I've traveled from
Great
all across the country in the last 2 weeks. I see the love of Trump on the wane, specifically because when you ask people specifics, it's like, well, we love roads and bridges.
Okay. Yeah, but I think reproductive
knowing what
justice,
we know about people, and what they like, what's going to turn them on.
All right. I mean, I think reproductive justice, but let's bookmark that for
I agree with
you. Okay. I mean, and it doesn't have to be one thing. I think
both of those messaged right.
And again, this is a frustrating thing. There are so many things that Democrats are doing right, that Joe Biden is doing right, and here we are, white knuckling this because the system is so stacked against us. Cliff, last thoughts about what we've been talking about?
Lock them all up.
Excellent. I heartily
love
concur.
So
Jen?
Put it on
I started getting really nervous with Brian's fantasy of Donald being locked up in one of Jared's walk-up tenement buildings in Baltimore. And the reason I got nervous is I was already envisioning how we could all, watch this, reality television show. And that's how Donald's going to make lemon.
Oh, it's going to be like the Truman Show.
Anything that happens to him. So anyway, on that note, look.
That's why Mark Burnett needs to be also
to the day he dies and beyond, because there will be holograms of him. This man will continue occupying way too much space and taking up way too much air. So I am going to focus on the nightmare governor in Florida, and I am now bookmarking in my brain this case Tara mentions, and everything about that state, including Matt Gaetz banning books and having veterans teach in schools. It is a bellwether. And that's where our attention really needs to be.
I agree.
Remember that Ron DeSantis had to have his election recount. It was that close. He governs as if he had won in a landslide. Right. It was a statistical tie.
That's right.
So, and he's up for re-election this fall.
Can I just point out in 2 seconds also, for Republicans, you want to win over moderate Republicans, suburbanites, point out all the attacks on the Tampa Bay Rays and Disney and all these companies he's gone after because they don't agree with him politically.
Yeah, that is also something to keep in mind because depending on how things go, I think he's likely, or it's a very good possibility, he'll be the nominee for the presidential nominee for 2024, which we'll have to see how that plays out in the next few months. And we haven't gotten to do this in a while because we've been pretty full, but I love hearing from you guys. Like, what are you up to that's keeping you sane, or that's keeping you entertained, or that's helping you unplug? Because once again, we've had a week of news that it's almost impossible to process, and it's almost impossible to detach from. So Brian, tell me something good that you've been doing, or something that could maybe help the rest of us better.
The
No, it
legal
doesn't,
stuff.
doesn't have to be legal. Come on.
Well, it's legal out here in LA. So, and
Right.
no, I came out to visit what's kept me sane the last few weeks is visiting my only grandson and playing in a pool with him.
The
Because
perpetually
Oh,
happy
nice.
grandson.
the eternally happy
Eternally,
grandson
sorry.
is celebrating his 3rd birthday. So we're out here
Aw.
in LA with them doing that. And it's the travel across country that drove me insane because of all it still is an inflection point for everyone across the
Focus
country.
on the good stuff that's happening.
So that's why it's rock and roll music, edibles, and my grandson.
Fabulous. Except for the second one. That doesn't.
Yeah.
But, knock yourself out.
He
Cliff,
does
did.
with those. Exactly.
I did. Cliff.
Yeah, I mean, the basics are always the same: working out, good music, anything that can get the heart going and get you forgetting about things. But by far the best is always my 2 boys. I got a 15-year-old and a 12-year-old, and they're awesome. And over the weekend, we went out and just kicked the soccer ball around because my 12-year-old's trying out for a team, that's going to be, a tough team that hopefully he'll make. And like joy, laughter, being around them. I love them. I adore them. And they can make me forget any of this shit, which is really helpful for those few moments.
Cool. Jen?
Yeah, I'm doing something new. Instead of starting to panic that, if summer is ending, even though I love fall, pretty soon it's going to be like March through April of hell. I've decided this year I'm going to focus on like planning for cross country skiing, and I'm getting some new boots.
Nice.
And then my husband, of course, said, "What makes you think it's going to snow this year?"
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I will drive up to Vermont if necessary to find trails. So I am like this week getting all my cross country ski gear ready. It's going to be put in one corner of my office here at home. So whenever I start to freak out about the cold weather moving in, I'm just going to think about like the good side of winter.
Nice. I've always wanted to cross country ski. I never have. I need to rectify that situation, but we might have to go to Switzerland to do that, unfortunately.
Okay.
Okay, we're there. Chara?
I do 2 hopeful things. I garden and I teach. With both of them, you start with nearly nothing and you hope a year
Right.
from now that you have something to show for it.
Oh, I love that.
Amen.
That's awesome. George?
Mind blown. That's awesome. I
It is
love
awesome.
riding. I have this like wonderful folding Brompton bicycle. I love riding around Central Park. It brings me a lot of joy and a lot of like release. And we've had some good movies out this summer, and I have really rekindled my love of not a too crowded movie theater, but I love being in a movie theater with a bucket of popcorn, a Diet Coke, and a bag of Twizzlers. Like that is such a happy place for me. I love it.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that. When I lived in Manhattan years and years and years ago, I used to go to like 3 movies a week, and I haven't been to one since pre-COVID. So that's when I get back. That's definitely what I'm doing because I'm on the Cape right now, which is one of my favorite places to be.
Beautiful.
Just breathing in that salt air, and I'm on day 30 of my detox. So I'm sort of starting to feel sort of human again. Because listen, the relay race is over. We're heading into sprint territory with 84 days left. So, I'm glad everybody is doing something that is restorative and helping. We all need something to that's good. That as simple as that sounds, we need things that feed us in ways that make us better people, make us better able to handle all of the horrors without turning into the people we're fighting against. So all of you are amazing, and I appreciate you so much, and I'm so grateful that you were here today. Chara, thank you so much for joining us. It was incredibly wonderful to have you. I hope you'll come back. And everybody else, I'll see you next week. And have a great week.
Have a good one.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye,
Bye,
guys.
guys.
It was a pleasure.
Well, that was awesome. Thank you so much to Chara Torres Spelisi, professor of law at Stetson University, again, an author of Corporate Citizen and Political Brands, for joining us today. It was really, really wonderful to get her perspective. And of course, thank you so much to the Nerd Avengers. And thank you to all of you for hanging with us and watching, listening, spreading the word. Yeah, we are getting close, guys. So let's keep the ball rolling. Let's keep the momentum going. And be sure to share the link with people. And as you know, our Thursday show coming up at 7 p.m., 4 p.m. Eastern. You can see, I'm sorry, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. You can go to youtube.com/Politicon. And next Tuesday, the Nerd Adventures will return. And that's also youtube.com/Politicon at 12 p.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. And while you're on the Politicon YouTube channel, please subscribe to Politicon. It doesn't cost anything. And like the episode, leave a comment there if you'd like, and click on that bell, because that way you will be sure to be alerted every time a new video drops. And that's not just the episodes, that's some of the short videos I do a couple of times a week. And of course, you can always listen on Apple or wherever you get your podcasts. And please do leave a 5-star review, because it helps other people find the show. And that is it for today. I will see all of you Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. In the meantime, please stay safe and be kind.